So in this video, I'm going to cover the very exciting topic of what are the top 10 highest paying supply chain jobs in the United States and who are the employers who are recruiting for those jobs right now. And if you don't live in the United States and you want me to make a very similar video about your country, do let me know in chat. My name is Jamil Hai and I've been working in supply chain management positions across South Asia, Middle East and North America for the last 2 decades. And my mission is to help supply chain professionals like you build real life skills for your job and career that they don't teach you in college. And if you are preparing for a supply chain job interview anytime soon, you should definitely book a coaching session with me because I'm going to take your resume, the job description you are applying for, and based on my experience, I'll give you some laser guided tips and tricks which are going to maximize your chances of success in your next job interview. Before I get into the top 10 list and the factors that drive the salary in any market, I wanted to share with you the sources of data I've used for this video. So I have used data from ASCM, which is the Association of Supply Chain Management, formerly known as APIX. I've also used data from LinkedIn, salary.com and indeed.com. So these are the sources where I have done a lot of research to come up with the numbers I'm about to share with you. So salary in any industry, in any country depends on some macro factors and some individual factors. Let's talk about the macro factors first. The first macro factor is industry. So every industry has different pay scales. For example, technology pays you a lot more than consumer goods, for example. Healthcare might pay you similar to consumer goods. Automotive might pay you a little bit different than that. So every industry has got their own scales. The second macro factor is the company size. You cannot expect a startup whose revenue is not even $20 million to pay you the same salary as a P&G or a Nestle or a Mars. So the size of the company has a significant influence on the salary ranges for similar jobs. The third factor is location. And because this video is about the US is a huge geography. It's almost like a continent on its own. And every region has got different pay scales. The map you see on the screen right now summarizes that. So if you look at the circle on the northeast, which is the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania belt, that is relatively a high salary paying region because the cost of living is high and there is a lot of competition out there for talent, for jobs, because especially in supply chain, a lot of big companies in the consumer goods sector, in the pharma sector, they have got their headquarters in that area. That's definitely one of the higher paying regions in the country. Similarly, if you go to the west in California, there's a lot of tech jobs there. Although California historically has not been very strong for supply chain jobs because it has been the hub of a lot of tech companies. But now a lot of these tech companies are also getting into consumable products. And you will see later on in this video that even companies like Snapchat are hiring supply chain professionals because now they are getting into wearable technologies, consumable products and so on. So they definitely need to set up their own supply chains to make that happen. Similarly, if you go to the south and southeast, you've got Dallas and Atlanta, which have been traditionally the hubs of consumer products, technology products, healthcare, and so on. Especially Atlanta is pretty strong in the healthcare supply chain industry because it serves all of that southeastern belt of the US. And then Houston has always been a hotbed for supply chain jobs in oil and gas because the oil and gas industry is very much centered over there. Now let's talk about the second set of factors that drive salaries, which is the individual factors. So there are 3 individual factors I want to touch on. The first one is your leadership and technical skills. The more skilled you are, the more experience you have both on the leadership and the technical side, the higher salary you'll get. So therefore, for each of the jobs I'm about to share with you, you will see an entry level salary range, a middle level salary range, and a senior level salary range. So those bands would change depending on your experience. Now, one thing to also keep in mind is that leadership experience salary wise is rewarded more than technical expertise because as a leader, you are even more effective for an organization than just a technical individual contributor because as a leader, you have the ability to inspire more people, to get more work out of more people. And therefore, the overall impact you have on the bottom line of the organization is higher. Therefore, of course, VPs, directors are paid more than, let's say, technical experts most of the time. Of course, there are always exceptions just because of the overall impact leaders have on an organization than individual contributors. So that's one factor. The other factor is, of course, experience. So the more experience you have, the more salary you'll get, which is pretty natural, because supply chain is not something which you can learn only by going to a college and maybe getting a degree, but it's a very experiential industry. So the experience you have in solving problems in different industries and different jobs is definitely rewarded more with more money as you grow further experience in your career ladder. And the last one is certifications. And I've made a separate video about, do certifications matter a lot in supply chain or not? And in that video, I've covered situations in which certifications matter. So while certification may not help you all the time, but there are very specific situations where your certification can help you negotiate a better salary. So now let's move to the top 10 list of the highest paying supply chain jobs in the US. And number 10 on our list is supply chain analyst or supply planner. Now, supply chain analyst or planners could be an entry-level job, could be a middle-level job, could be a senior-level job, and therefore the entry-level salary range is somewhere between $50,000 to $65,000. The mid-level can go anywhere between $65,000 and $90,000, and the senior-level jobs can go from $90,000 to $120,000. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, it depends on all those six macro and individual factors that we already covered. Now, what are the companies and industries which are hiring heavily for supply chain analysts or planners right now? Let's take a look. So it's all over the place. Microsoft is hiring right now. So that's a technology company. Nvidia, another technology company right now. Of course, their stock is all-time high. So they are definitely doing a lot of hiring. Halliburton, which is oil and gas. SpaceX is hiring for supply chain analysts and planners. So that must be definitely a very exciting job to work for Elon Musk and SpaceX. Sanofi is also hiring, which is a consumer goods company. McKinsey is consulting, and AT&T is telecom. Now, I've also made a very specific video about how to prepare for a supply planner job interview, and you can watch that video by clicking over here. Now let's move to number 9. So number 9 on our list is sourcing specialist. Now sourcing specialist jobs used to be also called as buyer jobs at some point in time, but now companies are using this term more often because it also covers aspects other than just purely buying, and it provides a little bit more holistic approach to procurement. Now procurement is a very important part of supply chain, and if you go back to one of my previous videos about how to find entry-level jobs in supply chain, I did cover the supply chain operations reference model or SCORE model, where I talked about the plan, source, make, deliver, and return and enable parts of supply chain. This one fits in the sourcing section of that model. And of course, so a sourcing specialist is kind of a procurement manager in the making, but it's a couple of levels below that job. Now let's talk about the salary range for this. The salaries are a bit similar to what we covered for supply planners. So the entry level salaries for a sourcing specialist are anywhere between $50,000 and $65,000. Mid level is $65,000 to $85,000, and then senior level sourcing specialists can earn as much as up to $110,000 or even more. Now, which companies are hiring sourcing specialists right now? So you see quite a good mix over there again. You see companies like Hydra Facial, which is a beauty tech company, Starbucks, which is in retail. Netflix is hiring as well, which is pretty interesting. SpaceX, Norwegian Cruise Line company is hiring, which is more in the travel space, and GE is also hiring for sourcing specialists. Now let's move to number 8, and number 8 on our list is demand planners. Now, demand planning is a topic very close to my heart. I've made several videos about it. In fact, I've made a very specific video on how to prepare for a demand planning job interview, which you can watch by clicking over here. Now, demand planners are a little bit more senior than supply planners typically in organizations, because in order to be a good, effective demand planner, you need to have some more experience in understanding the forecasting process. So while a supply planning job or a supply chain analyst job, like we covered on number 10, can be an entry-level jobs. Demand planning jobs can be entry-level jobs too, but they are relatively paid a bit more than entry-level supply chain jobs, and you will see that in the numbers here. So an entry-level demand planning job would start from $65,000 to $85,000. Mid-level is anywhere between $85,000 and $110,000, and then senior-level demand planners can earn up to $150,000 or sometimes even more if the job profile and the company is really big. Now, lots of great companies hiring again for demand planners, as you see here. So you've got Thermo Fisher, which is a biotech company, Abbott, which is a pharmaceutical company, Intuitive, which is more in surgical healthcare, is also hiring for demand planners. Tesla, Nvidia, so once again technology, and then of course Coca-Cola is also hiring for demand planners right now. Now let's move to number 7, and on number 7 we have got logistics manager. And logistics manager scope is a little bit bigger than just warehouse manager or just transportation manager. It's kind of a conglomerate of the two, and you can see that logistics managers entry level can be paid anywhere between 65 and 80 again, mid-level 80 to 100, and then senior level logistics managers can be paid between $100 to $150,000. Now, considering these are manager roles, so these scales might look a little bit lower to you, but the challenge with these logistics manager jobs is that most of the companies hiring for these roles are third-party logistics companies. And unfortunately, in the 3PL transport and warehousing industry, it's a very, very cutthroat competitive industry with very low margins. So salary ranges don't seem to be as good as they would be, for example, in tech jobs or in consumer goods jobs or in healthcare jobs. And because of this, although this is a manager level job, the salary ranges are pretty comparable to entry level or mid-level supply and demand planning jobs or the sourcing specialist jobs that you just saw. Now, keeping that in mind, a lot of companies which are hiring for a logistics manager right now, like I said, are a lot of logistics companies themselves. So you've got Direct Transport and Logistics, Penske, Schneider, Amazon is doing a lot of hiring, Samsung is doing some hiring as well. So you can see the dominant companies hiring for this particular job are basically third-party logistics companies, with of course a few exceptions. Number 6 on our list is procurement manager, and procurement manager is a very, very important job in supply chain, and I've covered that a lot in my recent video on how to prepare for a procurement manager job interview, question and answers, which you can watch by clicking over here. And the entry level salary for a procurement manager can be anywhere between $70,000 to $90,000. Mid level can go up to $120,000, and senior level procurement managers could make $140,000 or above. Now, one thing I always call out whenever I talk about procurement manager jobs is that these are very important jobs, and you should try to get that experience at some point in time in your career, because this is a job which controls a lot of money, right? So if you're doing planning, demand planning, supply planning, even logistics, you are managing a lot of operational stuff. You might be controlling some budget, but this procurement manager job is where the real money is spent with the suppliers, with the vendors, and so on. So getting that experience of negotiations, contract writing, and all of these skills which are required in the source area of our score model can really help you a lot in your career. So strongly recommended job to go for, and as you can see, the pay scales are pretty decent as well. And the companies which are hiring right now for procurement managers are Lockheed Martin, so that's more in the aerospace industry, Nestle, very well known name, Coca-Cola, Qualcomm, so that's telecom, Schneider, Amazon. So lots of big players hiring for procurement managers right now. So if you're a good procurement manager, you're definitely in high demand. And on number 5 is my personal favorite, because I've done these jobs for the biggest portion of my career. So I'm kind of emotionally attached to supply planning and demand planning manager jobs. And these are very important jobs because these jobs control the nerve center of supply chain in any organization. And therefore, their salary ranges are pretty decent as well. You can see an entry level job as a supply and demand planning manager would be anywhere between 80 to 100 grand. Mid-level is $100,000 to $130,000, and then senior supply planning managers or demand managers can be earning up to $175,000 or even more, once again depending on the organization. And the companies which are hiring for these roles right now are Johnson & Johnson, L'Oreal, Meta, Amgen, which is a pharmaceutical, and PepsiCo. So a lot of demand across different industries. Let's move to number 4, which is supply chain systems or supply chain IT manager. Now, this is a relatively less talked about job in supply chains, but with so much technology becoming an integral part of supply chain, I think this is a very important job. And although it's not very well integrated with the supply chain career paths, because the skill level that you require is more predominantly IT or knowledge of ERPs and the technical side of software or WMSs or TMSs or planning systems. But It's a very, very important job for supply chain success, and therefore it has a decent reward and remuneration structure. Entry level job for a supply chain systems manager can be anywhere between $100 to $120,000. Mid level can go up to 150, and senior level supply chain IT systems manager jobs can go north of $200,000 as well, because it all depends on what kind of skill set you bring. So for instance, if you are a supply chain IT systems manager who has the experience of implementing S4 HANA or O9, OMP, SAP APO, these kind of industry leading planning systems, and you are out there in the market and a company is doing the same implementation, of course they will pay you pretty handsome salary package for you to join their organization, because you bring the right skill set of implementing such technologies. And therefore you see a lot of hiring going on for these roles almost all the time. Right now, if you look at the market, there is Clorox hiring for it, there is Abbott hiring for this, Bristol Myers Squibb, a lot of hiring going on in the pharmaceutical segment. Meta is hiring, so that's technology. Brooks, I think that's a shoe company that's hiring for supply chain systems managers as well. So a very less talked about but a pretty lucrative job in supply chain requires you to have a lot of IT skills. That's why you don't see a lot of mainstream supply chain people going for these jobs, because it requires you to be an expert in one vertical, but definitely an important job in the supply chain top 10. Now we get into the top 3 highest paying jobs in supply chain, and on number 3 we have got procurement director. So procurement director is of course the senior level version of a procurement manager. So this is a person who is managing almost an entire commercial or procurement organization and has a lot of experience on all the procurement or the sourcing skills. And because this is a very senior role, there are no entry level jobs in procurement director. So the mid level salary ranges from $130,000 to $170,000. The senior level can be anywhere between $170,000 to $250,000 or even more. And right now you can see a lot of hiring once again going on for this role. Monster, which is an energy drink, which is hiring. Thermo Fisher once again. So biotech, Microsoft, Sierra Nevada Corporation, which is also in aerospace, and then Fresh, which is a beauty product, which is hiring for procurement directors as well. So as you can see, it's a pretty well rewarded job profile, but it requires a lot of relevant experience as well. Now let's move to number 2, which is supply chain director. Now supply chain directors, of course, have to have a very holistic experience of all the different areas of supply chain planning, logistics, customer service, a little bit of IT as well. So these jobs can lead an entire supply chain organization under their belt. And nowadays, even at the director level, you could be an expert in one vertical. So you could be a supply chain planning director, or you could be a supply chain transformation director. So a lot of different verticals possible in this job area as well. And definitely it's on number 2 for a reason, because it's one of the very highly compensated jobs, because you are typically as a supply chain director managing a bunch of people. So your impact on the organization is pretty high. Therefore, the mid-level salary for a supply chain director would start somewhere between $160,000 and could go up to $200,000. And then at the senior level, you could be earning up to $400,000 depending on the size of the company. Who is hiring right now? So a lot of hiring going on in pharmaceuticals once again. So these are some of the names which might be familiar to you if you have taken a COVID vaccine. So Moderna, AstraZeneca, 2 of the major vaccine developers are hiring for supply chain directors right now. Tropicana, which used to be PepsiCo, but now I think they have sold that to a private equity firm. That's hiring. Celine, which I think is a beauty company, is also hiring. And then we've got Wayfair, which is of course the Amazon of furniture. And that finally brings me to number 1 on our list, which is supply chain vice president. Now, this is the top job of supply chain in any organization. This is a job which is typically the right hand job of a CEO. Sometimes you are also called as the chief operating officer or COO. And this supply chain vice president job is compensated anywhere between $180,000 to $250,000 at mid-level, and senior level can go I mean, the sky is the limit there, of course, because keep in mind that at this level, you're not just being compensated in terms of salary, but you also have a stake in the company's profits. You are getting a bigger share of the profits the company makes on an annual basis. So you are really sitting at that top table with the rest of the leadership of the organization. So your compensation can be, sometimes even north of $600,000 if you are at that position. So who is hiring right now? Snapchat is hiring, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video. So Snapchat is, of course, getting into wearable gadgets and products. So of course they need strong supply chain organizations as well. So they are hiring. Telex is hiring, which is a pharma company. Wori, which is, I think, similar to Lululemon. It's an athletic products company. And Keter is also hiring, which is a household consumer products company as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I've also made videos on topics like supply chain KPIs and how to pass the P&G supply chain job interview, which you can watch by clicking over here. Keep watching.